learn about the connection between electromagnetic fields, Schumann resonances, EMFs, environmental energies, how it affects your health and wellness, your body. And if you are not aware of these things to begin with, then the first step is to bring this into consciousness. Start to do things that improve your electromagnetic environment, whether that's your home, your apartment, and then also your internal bioelectric environment. So if you do all these things, then you can notice pretty big improvements in your gut health. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Stefan, and today we're going to do a deep dive into the connection between environmental energies, electromagnetic fields, the Schumann resonances, and your gut health, the gastrointestinal system. And the reason why we're talking about this is because there is a very strong electromagnetic connection between your environment and your overall bioelectric system with your gut health. And your bioelectric system and your gastrointestinal system are both foundational aspects of your health and wellness. So if you want to live a long, happy, and healthy life, then you should probably have good gut health. And one big aspect of that is being aware of your environmental energies and how they interact with your gut health, how they interact with your body. And this is a very multifaceted connection that exists. So this is going to be an in-depth conversation into these. I've created this diagram here. At the end, we're going to talk about what you can do to improve your gut health and to manage these changing environmental energies to the best of your ability. So watch to the end for that. But I will also preface that this is a vast subject where there's a lot that is still being learned. There's so much we don't know. And there's also a lot that has been researched that's probably not exactly 100% accurate. So is the way of life. This is science. So I'm going to lay out all this as best as I can for you, but please keep in mind that this is not exactly as it may be, but this is certainly a good place for you to start if you are new to the subject or if you are continuing your education into environmental electromagnetism, electromagnetic fields, Schumann resonances, gut health, health and wellness, everything. We are going to touch on a lot of different topics because, for example, you have the gut-brain axis, your digestive system, your microbiome, talk to your brain and vice versa. So this is kind of touching a lot of different fields, and I'm going to do my best to keep this concise for you and stick to a clear linear path. So by the end of this video, you have a much better understanding of how all these things are connected together. So with that, let's dive right in. Now, a lot of people are completely oblivious to the connection between electromagnetic fields and gut health and overall the human body and mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, because electromagnetism for the most part is this invisible influence. We see visible light, that is the spectrum, the part of the light spectrum that we exist in, that we see, we interact with, and that's a very narrow slice of the infinite electromagnetic spectrum. So photons, which are the carrier of electromagnetic energy, they have these pulsating electric and magnetic fields, and these are fundamental to our reality. They are a fundamental force of nature, and they build these fields of potential. And these fields of potential exist through all space-time, not just outside you, but also within you. So if we look at our gut health diagram right here, you can see that from the brain all the way down the brainstem and the esophagus to the heart, stomach, liver, the intestines, that makes up a quite large portion of your body. So you have electromagnetic potentials all throughout your body. A lot of these electromagnetic potentials across different scales, going from quantum to your biofield aura, all the way up to the electromagnetic potential of the earth, these exist within your body, and a lot of those are located in the gastrointestinal system. So the changing electromagnetic fields of your environment and of yourself will influence your gut health. But let's rewind just a little bit and let's talk about what some symptoms of bad gut health are and then what you can expect with good gut health. A personal story for you is that I had gut health issues since I was a kid. I was oblivious to them until I was a teenager. And then as I went to college, got a degree in geology, then went into the workforce as a geophysicist, as I was learning about all these environmental electromagnetic energies and electromagnetism and all this great stuff, geophysics, I was also doing research on the side into health and wellness because I've always had a huge fascination with biology, and I was on what I would call a gut health journey, which culminated recently with me writing the Holistic Gut Health Guide, because at this point I have remediated my gut health problems. I discovered what they were, and I went through a variety of processes to heal my gut from dysfunctional to where it is now, which is pretty easy to maintain good gut health, and everything is doing well. I feel great, look good, feel good is what they say. So if you're interested in the complete guide that I've written that takes all the research that I conducted, and then also personal experimentation and investigations into good gut health, then you can look at my Holistic Gut Health Guide on my website, Wild for Your Organic. There's a link in the video description. So, bad gut health symptoms. Well, the first and most obvious would be like nutrient deficiencies or anemia. You're not getting the nutrients you need, or more likely, you're not absorbing the nutrients that you need. There is a dysfunction between you eating and your body actually able to extract those nutrients. And this can be the fact that you have digestive linings, your small intestine are worn down, the villi, for example, because you have some gluten insensitivity, for example, or maybe celiac, that's causing an autoimmune reaction with your digestive lining. So you're not getting some of these critical nutrients. Maybe you have gut motility problems, and food transiting through your digestive system isn't spending the right amount of time in the right spots, so it's not receiving enzymes as it should be, bile as it needs to. It's not being broken down enough in the stomach, for example. And then there's also factors like you aren't producing enough bile, you aren't producing the right digestive enzymes, things of this nature. So if you have bad gut health, it's likely that you have some nutrient deficiencies. You may even have like anemia, and that can lead also to poor energy control, metabolism regulation. So you don't have an ability to really fire up your energetic systems and have energy when you need it all day at your disposal. You don't have good energy storage. You might have a lot of adipose fat tissue, white fat, not brown fat, which is much more metabolically active. It can turn on and off at a dime, and that is the type of fat that you want. It's healthy for you. So you might not have good brown fat stores if you have bad gut health. And this can also just be your ability to regulate your energy. You might have extreme energy volatility throughout the day if you have bad gut health, because that is how you get your energy in the first place, is by eating food. So those are some bad gut health symptoms. There's also some mental and brain effects. You might have mental health problems. This can be anxiety, depression, paranoia, psychosis, schizophrenia, autism spectrum disorders, ADHD, attention deficit disorders. They haven't looked at a mental health condition yet and not found a link to gut health. So that's telling in and of itself. So you want good gut health so you can have good mental health. Again, that gut-brain axis is bidirectional. We'll talk about that more. You also, in line with that, have mood and emotional dysregulation. Emotions are very powerful. They can cause a lot of stress on the body, and they activate the immune system. There's some really interesting research on that. And so if you're not able to kind of process your emotions as they come up, and if you're not able to regulate your mood, then that's going to be stressful on the body and can actually even lead to things like chronic disease and cancer. There's more research coming out on that. And if you have good gut health, then you can expect to be better at regulating your mood and processing your emotions. So if you have bad gut health, that's going to be harder for you. And one of the reasons why is because a lot of your neurotransmitters are produced by the microbiome in the large intestine. So again, that gut-brain axis is very key. We have higher inflammation, and it can be chronic inflammation. That is one of the telltale symptoms of bad gut health, because the gut is one of the centers of the immune system, one of the biggest centers of the immune system, if not the largest, and the immune system in a large way controls inflammation. So if you have a lot of inflammation in your body, it's probably something that is off with your gut. And let's say it's not necessarily caused by your gut, that inflammation will then affect your gastrointestinal system because it takes up most of your torso and a lot of your body. So whether or not it's from the gut, effectively at the end of the day, it will affect the gut. Then we have a low resilience to change and stress. if you have, I mean, change is like a constant of life. So if you have good energy metabolism, good mental health and all this stuff, you are pretty self-resilient. You can handle these changes as they come, take them blow for blow and keep moving on. If you have bad gut health, you'll find it typically harder to manage and adapt to these changes as they happen. And that, of course, is not a good thing. We want to be able to change as necessary. And if you have bad gut health, you're going to find it harder. Most people will find it harder if they have bad gut health to adapt to these changes and to adapt to stress and maintain homeostasis in the context of a big stress load. And stress can be good and bad for you. So you want to be able to maintain homeostasis. That's your hypothalamic-pituitary-adrenal axis, your HPA axis. That it can lead dysregulation there can lead to things like chronic fatigue syndrome. So we'll talk about that. You have microbiome and parasitic control. This is something I expect a lot of research to come out on in the next couple decades about how the microbiome and parasites can influence your behavior. We do know that the microbiome, for example, produces a lot of neurotransmitters. Specifically, produces like 80% of your body's serotonin, which is a feel-good neurotransmitter that's very important throughout the entire body. And I've seen just a lot in my personal life with people I know, how if they have a bad diet, bad gut health, they're eating a lot of sugar, and they start to cultivate this sugar-loving pathogenic microbiome, well, when it doesn't get sugar, it's going to say, hey, give me some more sugar, give me some more processed food, and they start to come under the control of that microbiome and have these behaviors that are not in and of themselves reflective of their true spirit and consciousness. So expect a lot of research to come out there. That's kind of tricky in terms of how do you actually scientifically show this stuff, because it's such a kind of nebulous effect, long duration, but there will be some interesting science that comes out there, I'm sure, over the next few decades. Then you have a higher risk of chronic diseases and cancers and cardiovascular disease and heart events, and the list goes on. Mental health problems, Alzheimer's is, for example, and Parkinson's are heavily connected to gut health dysregulation, gastrointestinal diseases and problems like IBS, which is irritable bowel syndrome, inflammatory bowel disease, celiac, Crohn's. You could keep going on. And then you have one of the kind of real world aspects of having bad gut health is that you're often having embarrassing things happen to you. You need to stay close to a bathroom at all times, perhaps. Your lifestyle has to adapt to your gut, because it's so finicky and so volatile that you don't know whether something's going to happen at any moment. Whereas if you have good gut health, you can expect to be very regular, and it's all nice and clean, it's not messy, and overall you have a lot more control over your lifestyle, because you're not always thinking in the background like, oh, is this going to be a problem? Like, if I have this, is it going to cause some sort of effect? That's a huge mental and emotional drain, and a physical drain. I mean, gut health is really foundational. If you are on any sort of spiritual journey, for example, having good gut health is one of the primary steps to kind of awakening your spiritual energies. Just a side note there. And the last one I didn't really talk on was autoimmunity, allergies, and immune stress. Again, your immune system is really centered at the gastrointestinal digestive linings, because that is the largest surface area attack vector. You can think of your intestines, for example. You have like this tube, right? Everything that's transiting through that tube is technically outside your body. It hasn't passed through a barrier to get into your bloodstream yet. So it's a very large surface area that the immune system has to protect against. It has a mucosal lining that covers that digestive epithelial layer. So those are cells. And then there's the mucosal layer, which regulates nutrient flow and stops microbes from being able to, kind of break open those tight junctions of the digestive system. That's a very big immune system barrier. But then if the digestive system and the mucosal lining, if all those things are degraded, now these pathogens and viruses and parasites are flowing into the bloodstream uninhibited. And now the immune system has, instead of just, this large surface area to protect, it has this huge volume that it needs to now cover. So the resources that the immune system needs can dramatically go up if you have gut health problems. So this can lead to autoimmune issues, this can lead to cancers because you have a fundamental dysregulation in the body, chronic diseases. A lot of them are linked to inflammation, and your gut is one of the primary kind of ways your body either holds inflammation or doesn't have inflammation, because a lot of that comes from the food that you bring in. There's a lot that I just won't be able to touch on here, unfortunately. That's why I recommend that you read my holistic gut health guide. It's 88 pages, condensed, full of all of this. Okay, so that's good gut health, bad gut health. How do Schumann resonances, electromagnetic fields, and the environmental energies of where you live, how do that interact with your gastrointestinal system? Well, the body is bioelectric at its core. You have fundamentally a whole bunch of atoms, and in that atom there's a nucleus with a proton, which is a positively charged little particle. And then you have neutrons, which are neutrally zero charge, and then you have electrons, which are negative charge. And electrons have these spins on them, and they have different orbital levels, and atoms combine into chemicals, and they have different charges, and they have reactivity to other chemicals, selective. Sometimes they're very reactive with a whole bunch of things. That could be like a free radical, a reactive oxygen species. It just wants to react with something to fill up its orbital shells, so it has all the electrons it needs. And then there's other things that aren't reactive at all. But going from kind of the quantum level up, you have all these electromagnetic influences. You have cells, which have ion channels and gates and pumps, which they hold on to, like a sodium ion, which is a Na +1, or a calcium ion, Ca +2. Or they have potassium channels, and these regulate a whole bunch of different processes in the body: cellular signaling, intracellular communication, cellular group activity and behavior. So cellular voltage gradients are determined by a lot of this stuff. These are voltage gradients, electromagnetic gradients across the tissues of the body. And then if you want to go really simple, I should have started here, is that your heart has an electromagnetic field. Your brain pulses electromagnetic brain waves at the same frequencies of the Schumann resonances, which we will talk about in just a little bit. So fundamentally, you have a lot of electromagnetic activity happening in the body across all the various scales, all the way from the quantum to your biofield aura. And this all interacts with your environmental energies fundamentally. This can be electromagnetic fields of the earth, like the Schumann resonances. This can be environmental electromagnetic fields from the power grid, from the Wi-Fi router, from your cell phone. So we're going to talk about all of that. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that there's electromagnetic potentials that exist throughout the entire human body, from quantum to earth and scale. That's really kind of the key, is recognizing that there are these potential energies. To really quickly explain that, we all know gravity, right? There's an apple on a tree, and it has this potential energy to drop and then accelerate when it hits the ground. Electromagnetism is the same. It has a energy potential, and those potentials can be incredibly large, so large that they create lightning strikes in the atmosphere, for example, or they can be small and just create a very small diffusion of ions across a voltage gradient, for example. But we have these electromagnetic potentials throughout the body, and that fundamentally instructs our DNA to do what it does and everything up from there. So that is how there's a connection between environmental energies and electromagnetic fields and ubiquitous natural electromagnetic fields like the Schumann resonances. So before I go into things like the hypothalamic-pituitary-adrenal HPA axis, or the autonomic nervous system, or the vagus nerve, or the hippocampus, and start to really split some of these bodily tissues apart and how they interact with the electromagnetic fields and the digestive system, let's talk about these environmental energies and these electromagnetic fields first. Let's start with the Schumann resonances. These are really fascinating because they are one of the premier geophysical forces on our planet. They are electromagnetic standing waves, specific wavelengths that are resonant with the Earth. They're produced by a lot of different processes, including your brain, which we'll get to. The reason why they're resonant with the Earth is the foundational mode here at 7.83 hertz on average, but it ranges from 7 to 9, has a wavelength pretty much equivalent to the circumference of the Earth. So that wave traveling in the waveguide between the Earth's surface and the ionosphere, this highly charged region of the upper atmosphere, nicely fits that waveguide perfectly and just goes like this. Mode 2 at about 14 hertz on average is the harmonic, the second highest, the higher mode, the second mode of that foundational mode. And so it resonates nicely too, based on the Earth's physical size. Then you have mode 3 at about 20 hertz on average, mode 4 at 25, and then mode 5 at 33. And you have higher modes still, but they're much more rare. Those are the 5 dominant modes, and really it's modes 1 through 4 that you see really strongly when you look at, let's say, the background electromagnetic spectrum. So these standing waves of light, the Schumann resonances, exist in the extremely low frequency part of the light spectrum. These photons that vibrate at these very low frequencies are no different than the photons that vibrate at the frequency of visible light. The only difference is their vibrational oscillation. How often are they vibrating per second? But it's not like it's a different type of photon. For example, a Schumann resonance photon could be absorbed into an electron, and then maybe later, due to new circumstances, it gets re-emitted from that electron at a higher frequency, or vice versa. So these photons, the only difference between them is their frequency, how they're vibrating, and that is effectively a measure of the energy that they contain. So these standing waves exist within the Earth. So inside the body of the Earth, you can find these as telluric currents. You can do a magnetotelluric survey, put some stakes in the ground over a large area and measure these Schumann resonances. That's how they do a lot of geophysical work. You can measure them in the atmosphere. So where we are right here, they are Schumann resonances nicely propagating at, again, that wavelength equal to the circumference of the Earth. So this is incredibly long wavelength. This is actually not to scale there. And then you can find them in the ionosphere and actually out even into the radiation belts, where they interact with highly charged relativistic ions like electrons and cause them to precipitate down into the ionosphere, which changes the electromagnetic potentials of the ionosphere, which can then change weather patterns, and that can change the Schumann resonances themselves. So it's a very complex back and forth process. And these Schumann resonances have existed likely since the creation of the Earth's atmosphere, because the properties of the ionosphere, the atmosphere, naturally would kind of build up these standing waves. The ionosphere acts as a waveguide where they kind of bounce off of the lower boundary of the ionosphere. So they've existed for most likely billions of years, and therefore we evolved into Schumann resonances, and that's the most likely reason why our brain oscillates at those same frequencies, at the same strengths, picotesla strengths. And if you look across a lot of different animals, they also have similar brainwave frequencies and strengths. So it's just an efficient thing for evolution to do, to piggyback on those natural energies. And there's actually evidence that the Schumann resonances and your brain waves connect together, and there's like a global information field there. But the Schumann resonances connect to not only your brain, also your heart. There are clear links between the Schumann resonances and heart rate variability. So the heart there, has a heart rate, and how that heart rate changes is heart rate variability. And heart rate variability is an excellent measure of autonomic nervous system health. And the autonomic nervous system is connected to the digestive system. This is the mostly unconscious part of the nervous system, and it regulates things like heart rate and digestion, your libido, and just overall like arousal, and your sex hormones and sex organs, also your breathing. It connects the brain to the internal organs. So the autonomic nervous system, when it's dysregulated, likely will result in bad gut health outcomes, because that is one of the key aspects of the autonomic nervous system. For example, the vagus nerve is part of the parasympathetic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system is split into parasympathetic and sympathetic. Sympathetic is your fight or flight. So you see something visually stimulating or engaging, and it kicks off and releases adrenaline and cortisol. This actually stops the movement of food through your gut if sufficient concentrations are reached of adrenaline and cortisol. And then you have so that's your fight or flight response. And then you have your parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and digest, or your feed and breed part of your digestive system. And the vagus nerve is 75% of the nerves that make up your parasympathetic nervous system. And it starts all the way at the brain, this is the blue, going down to the large intestine, and innervates all the different organs and connects to the microbiome. So the microbiome can actually influence you through the vagus nerve going up, and then you get influence down as well. It's bidirectional. That's that gut-brain axis. So the microbiome has an undue influence on your overall health and wellness and mental health, moods, emotions, behaviors. And that's why it's really good to be very mindful of your microbiome. And if you actually want to read a chapter from the Holistic Gut Health Guide, I'll put a link in the video description to chapter 4, which is on the microbiome, and that chapter is free. So you can read that if you want to get a sense of what the Holistic Gut Health Guide is all about. So you have the vagus nerve, the autonomic nervous system. What's the hypothalamic-pituitary-adrenal axis? And we'll get back to Schumann resonances and all these others. I'm, again, building this comprehensive picture. The HPA axis. The hypothalamus is a part of the brain that takes in a lot of sensory input and then feeds that input to the endocrine system, to the pituitary gland, where the pituitary gland can then release various endocrine hormones based on what's happening to you. So for example, you have in the pituitary gland the releasing of follicle stimulating hormone and growth hormone, luteinizing hormone, thyroid stimulating hormone, prolactin, vasopressin, oxytocin. A lot of these are based upon, like, for example, reproduction, or you have like a little baby that's crying and you need to feed it. It depends on your male or female how these hormones affect you. And the hypothalamus takes in these sensory inputs and then says, okay, pituitary gland, release that, do that, do that, do that. And the pituitary gland also releases hormones that then influence the adrenal glands, which is where you have cortisol and adrenaline released. Now, let's say you have a stressful situation occur. They actually did a really great study with like 200 plus subjects, and they studied all these hormone markers for these students before an exam, a stressful event. And exam is actually a really good kind of example of a stressful event in most people's lives, because let's say you have some sort of work event, or you have a presentation you're doing, or you just have like a really crazy 3 hours that's stressful. It's all kind of similar to like an exam. So this study was really great, and they showed that as the exam was getting closer and during the exam, adrenaline and cortisol went way up, and that actually completely stopped gut motility, the transit of food through the digestive system. And that's important because if food doesn't transit through the digestive system regularly, then it might get stopped up, blocked up. That might cause a little bit of like a small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Maybe something gets stopped somewhere too long, and that has a local inflammatory response. Maybe it's moved then too quickly through another section of the gut, so it doesn't receive the bile that it needs to break down the fats. And then you have this quick, rapid stool movement as a result, because you didn't properly break down your fats. There's a whole bunch of things that happen when your gut motility is off. Now, if a bear is chasing you, you don't want to be like, oh, I need to go to the bathroom, hang on, bear, right? But what's happening in modern society is people are activating their sympathetic system way more than they should be, and they haven't learned how to regulate their sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. And that's something that you just need to learn, you need to practice, and we'll get into that. So people are finding themselves overly sympathetic all the time, constantly in this fight or flight response, and that just degrades the HPA axis, eventually leads to chronic fatigue syndrome. Your adrenals get shot, they've used up all their resources, so now you don't have the resources you need to produce the endocrines that your body needs. So you're deficient in different sex hormones and various neurotransmitters, because again, this is all coming from your gut. Your microbiome turns pathogenic, and it's a pretty dark negative feedback loop pretty quickly. But Luckily, there are some easy things you can do to kind of turn that around. So we will get to that. Now, inflammation is one of the hallmark symptoms of a gut health problem. And the reason why environmental energies and electromagnetic fields and Schumann resonances have a big influence on your gut health is because inflammation at its core, in many ways, is driven by free radicals, which are chemicals and compounds that are just deficient in their charge. They have a charge to them. They're not stable in their molecular structure. So they're saying, I need an electron. You have reactive oxygen species, which are a type of free radical. And then you have things like inflammatory cytokines. All these things are reactive. So if your body is producing a lot of these charged substances, or you're kind of getting a lot of them through your diet, then these electromagnetic fields will have a stronger influence on you because there are more charged agents in your body that can interact with them in the first place. So for example, the home. You live in a house, an apartment somewhere. You probably don't live in a cabin. You might. I hope, that'd be cool. But the power grids of our modern societies run at 50 hertz or 60 hertz, depending on where you live. So this is oscillating 50 times a second or 60 times a second. They have shown that a 50 hertz field will increase the production of reactive oxygen species and inflammatory cytokines. So being in a normal electromagnetic field that is created from the power grid, you can measure these things anywhere. As a geophysicist, you take a magnetometer and you do a survey, you will always get 50 hertz or 60 hertz noise. You got to filter it out every single time. Even if you think you're far away from the house, it's radiating out. So that's why earthing is so valuable. We'll talk about earthing. But if you are in these fields, you are producing more of these reactive oxygen species and inflammatory cytokines. And you're going to produce more of those, especially if you're eating a bunch of junk, sugar, processed foods, oxidized oils and fats. If you're eating like a jackass or like a little kid, then, and you're playing stupid games, then you're going to win stupid prizes. And that's going to be inflammation and chronic diseases, potentially cancer. It's not going to be a good scenario in the long run if you keep playing that game. So it's going to be, it's hard to get away from the power grid and these electromagnetic fields that come off of these power lines because they are quite strong. You can do things like earthing to remediate those effects, and those are actually quite powerful and can do a lot. But at the end of the day, the biggest thing you do to improve your gut health and to limit the effect of electromagnetic fields on your gut health is to eat a good diet, which includes lots of fruits and vegetables and unprocessed foods. For example, things that come from the earth are really good, like potatoes, carrots, parsnips, tubers, ginger, turmeric. Turmeric is highly anti-inflammatory. These things contain antioxidants, which bind to free radicals and neutralize their charge. That's a good way to reduce the overall amount of charged agents in your body, which then reduces the effect that these electromagnetic fields have on your body at any given time. Now, when we talk about microwaves from the phone, people will say, oh, well, these are non-ionizing fields. These are microwaves and they're at voltage levels that don't affect you. Well, let's think about this. You have, let's say you're in an apartment and there are like 40 or 50 Wi-Fi networks near you. And it's the 2.4 and then also the 5 gigahertz. Each one's putting out 2. And then you have your phone, which is putting out the microwave signal, in addition to any smart appliances you have. And you get this vast interference pattern of electromagnetic energy. And that's just at that very small slice of the microwave spectrum. Now, that might not have super direct effects on you bioelectrically, though it does, kind of beyond the scope of this video. But it is certainly affecting your microbiome because bacteria have clear and established links to electromagnetic fields in the microwave band, going down to the extremely low frequency band, which the Schumann resonances are in. So, for example, in the microbiome, which is whether it's bacteria, parasites, or viruses, electromagnetic interactions influence growth. DNA assembly for viruses in particular. Some of these electromagnetic fields have been shown to be able to assemble viral DNA into coherent fragments and then start the replication process. It's really crazy stuff. Chemical signaling between microbes is influenced by these electromagnetic fields. Of course, there's a whole bunch of unknown factors that we don't even know yet. And then this is a large part driven by microwave interactions. And now microwaves are a type of radio wave. They're at the upper part of that radio wave spectrum. So you could say, oh, well, it's non-ionizing. It doesn't break a chemical bond. Well, there's other ways that electromagnetic radiation can affect you. And if you haven't looked into this, and I highly recommend you do. Good job for watching this video, because you're on the right path in the first place. But this is just to some of these skeptics that just look at just that, they look at the front door and they don't walk through it. Now, neurons interact with electromagnetic fields and Schumann resonances. I mean, brainwaves oscillate at Schumann frequencies going from 0 to 50 plus hertz and at the same picotesla strengths. So that's your first clue. But the reason why we're talking about neurons is because, again, your brain and gut are linked by the gut-brain axis. So your brain talks to your digestive system, which then talks to your microbiome. So now you can start to see how these all play together, right? So neurons have, they create electromagnetic waves and interference patterns of their own. That's the first thing to remember. And then electromagnetic fields alter voltage-gated channels. These are specifically like calcium channels. So this then alters neural spiking, which is the electrical discharge from a neuron, and also the action potentials needed to cause a neural spike. So electromagnetic fields can influence these processes. So it can actually change your cognitive processes and brainwaves in your consciousness fundamentally. And then also EMFs alter gene and protein expression. And there's some really interesting research on that, on how these electromagnetic fields actually have epigenetic influences. So another way that electromagnetic fields and all these forces interact to your body and your health, and in this video in particular, your gut health, is through ions. You have just calcium ions, potassium ions, sodium ions, all these electrolytes interact fundamentally with electromagnetic fields at that atomic scale. So when you have different voltage gradients in your body at the cellular level and at like the organ-wide level, then that influences a lot of cell-to-cell signaling, because a lot of that is driven by ions and how they are released and interchanged between cells. So ions have a charge, again, are directly affected by electromagnetic fields. They form these cellular voltage gradients. And one thing you look into further for your own research is morphogenetics. Very interesting stuff there. And ion concentrations drive muscle contractions in large part. This is not just, you flexing your bicep. This is also the smooth muscle contractions that make up your gut and cause food to move through your digestive system. These are called peristaltic waves. So the smooth muscles that surround your small intestine, your large intestine, your stomach, they're the ones that contract and push food through your digestive system. And if they are pulsing at a regular rhythm, gut motility is good, everything's happy. If they are out of sync and misfiring because you're overly stressed, your sympathetic nervous system is too activated, your parasympathetic nervous system is subdued, there maybe is a huge increase in the Schumann resonances, some large electromagnetic energy burst. There's a geomagnetic storm happening. You go from your cabin in the woods to the Big Apple, New York City, and all of a sudden you're just awash in electromagnetic radiation and overstimulated from all the different things happening. Well, your gut health might take a turn for the worse. So, and then it's also, ions are important regulators of cellular activities and group expression of cells. So I touched on that just a little bit, but again, these ion concentrations, electrolyte concentrations you have in your body are really fundamental. So you want to make sure you're having good electrolytes come into your body from whole and unprocessed foods, and then also using a salt that's contains a lot of different ions like sea salt. You want to drink good water that contains like harder water, You don't want fluorinated water. Tap water is terrible. Let's put that out there right now. It is antimicrobial, bad for the microbiome. It also affects your brain. But if you drink good water with lots of calcium, magnesium, you're more likely to have good gut health, good brain health, and just good health in general. Now, another way that your body interacts with electromagnetic fields and how this influences your gut is through magnetosomes and biomagnetite. And this is very new information and understandings that we have on how our body interacts with electromagnetic fields. Let's start with the fact that it's magnetic, magnetosomes, and biomagnetite. Magnetite is a mineral. The chemical formula is Fe3O4, so there's 3 irons and there's 4 oxygens. And this is one of the most magnetic minerals in existence. You have various levels of magnetism. You have, for example, diamagnetism, where it actually will push away a magnetic field. Then you have paramagnetism. It's conditionally magnetic. This is like the oxygen that you breathe in. That's paramagnetic. And then you have ferromagnetic. You actually have like ferrimagnetic in the middle, which is, it's magnetic, but there's some canceling of the magnetic domains. But then ferromagnetic is where things are just like fully aligned and have very high orientational energies to electromagnetic fields. So for example, the Earth's core is filled with ferromagnetic magnetite minerals and others, very, very dense minerals that have strong and create strong magnetic fields. So what we've discovered is that the human body produces endogenously magnetite in the brain, and we think probably in other parts of the body too. And it also seems that the body can hold on to biomagnetite. So just random little magnetite crystals might get taken up and held onto, or become attached to a cellular membrane. And this is important because you have magnetosomes in the neurons, and we talked about how the neurons are connected to the autonomic nervous system, the vagus nerve, the gut, and everything. The hippocampus is where you have some really strong neural rhythms. For example, the neurons of the hippocampus, one of the default rhythms that they pulse at is 8 Hertz, which is the foundational mode of the Schumann resonance. And the hippocampus connects to all these different aspects of your body, so it's connected to your gut. Though the hippocampus is more about spatial awareness, language, memories, but it's driving neurogenesis in your brain. And if your magnetosome and iron metabolism is out of whack, then this is going to change your ability to interact with electromagnetic fields. What they show with Alzheimer's is that people with Alzheimer's have way higher concentrations of magnetosomes that become like dislodged. The idea is that they actually get broken down out of their protective enclosures, clump together, and create this inflammatory influence in the brain, which the body's just not able to recover from, causes neural degradation, and then Alzheimer's sets in. But if your brain is healthy, then again, via the gut-brain axis, your gut is more likely to be healthy too, and vice versa. So if you have a lot of inflammation in your gut and bad gut health, that inflammation will go up to your brain, and then it'll start to maybe cause some of these neural inflammatory cascades that release these highly magnetic magnetite particles out of magnetosomes, and they clump together, and etc. But the other thing that's important with biomagnetite magnetosomes is, since they have such high orientational energies to magnetic fields, it's speculated that they are one of the primary ways that these ion channels and gates and pumps are actually activated through mechanical stimulation. Because they actually vibrate to these electromagnetic fields, they then cause the ions that are stored in a voltage gate to then be released. And it's the release of these electrolytes that drive a lot of things like the smooth muscle contractions of your gut, these peristaltic rhythms, your brain waves, etc. So these biomagnetite and magnetosomes are really, really important in regards to just understanding how the body interacts with electromagnetic fields in general. And then you can kind of go into specific sub-niches from there. They are found in the brain, but may be found throughout all bodily tissues. And there's likely a lot of undiscovered functions and interactions that exist with these biomagnetite and magnetosomes. So those are some of the different things in the body that interact with electromagnetic fields. I mean, we're not even talking about like the electromagnetic field directly of the heart or of the brain or the overall body potential. But these electromagnetic fields, specifically the artificial ones from the power grid and from cell towers and from your phone is very powerful because it has to push a signal to the cell tower. So it has to be much more powerful in its field that it puts out. And various appliances that you use, electronics, what we're doing overall in our society is we're just creating more electromagnetic noise. So people are like, oh, well, it's non-ionizing. Again, back to this non-ionizing aspect. It's not breaking molecular bonds, but it's raising the overall electromagnetic energy so it becomes easier to ionize and break a bond. That's something people don't think about, but that's very important. It's raising the overall inflammatory load in a significant way, and there's plenty of research coming out now showing that, and there's going to be plenty more coming out. So get ahead of this if you value your health and wellness, and start to practice things like earthing. Earthing is connecting to the earth. That's why we're outside in this video, because so you can put your feet on the ground directly. That is the easiest way to practice earthing, putting yourself in conductive contact with the earth's electromagnetic potential, releasing your charge. This brings a lot of anti-inflammatory benefits into your body. Your connective tissues, for example, extracellular living matrix that they call it, is host to a lot of free electrons. There's a lot of tissues and compounds and arrangements and like the actual collagen fibers and everything, they're able to donate electrons. And so they form these protective regions around these zones that are inflamed. And if you're practicing earthing, you're giving your body adequate free electrons and antioxidants to then send to those areas of inflammation to then cause the healing process to then come to its normal conclusion. Everything's just repaired, regenerated, and you're happy and healthy. But when inflammation runs haywire and these free radicals start to create new free radicals because they combine and take an electron for something and then create two free radicals in the process, kind of like the Greek myth of the Hydra, cut one head off, you get two in its place, then you can have these inflammatory cascades. And you see things like that was a big thing with the COVID pandemic, is people were having these inflammatory cascades from the spike proteins, and that is something that can happen if your gut health goes downhill, it starts to degrade, is that this inflammation can just get out of control. And that's why it leads to things like chronic disease and cancer and heart issues. And if the heart is circulating blood that has all these toxins in it and all these free radicals and all these microbes and bacteria that are pathogenic, it's just taking on such a huge load, and it has to pump every single second. There's no time off ever for the heart. Like, thank you so much, heart. And people don't respect that. They don't honor their heart. They don't honor their body. They do not treat their body like a temple. And if you are not aware of these things to begin with, then the first step is to bring this into consciousness. Learn about the connection between electromagnetic fields, Schumann resonances, EMFs, environmental energies, how it affects your health and wellness, your body, and then start to do things consciously that improve your electromagnetic environment, whether that's your home, your apartment, and then also your internal bioelectric environment. So if you do all these things, then you can notice pretty big improvements in your gut health. So let's say you have gut health problems. You have irritable bowel syndrome. It's just very volatile, bloating, gas, cramps, your gut motility is all over the place, you're kind of tied to the toilet, let's say. You have inflammatory bowel disease, like big problems there. Small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, gluten intolerance, fructose intolerance. You have a highly restricted diet because everything is triggering you. You have food allergies, Crohn's disease, celiac. There's a lot. If you have some of these gut health problems, then one way you can turn the tide is to be cognizant and mindful of your environmental electromagnetic exposure. Practicing things like grounding, going outside and reducing the charge of your body, bringing in these antioxidants and free electrons into your body, your extracellular matrix, loading up your electromagnetic potentials, and changing fundamentally your electromagnetic potentials will then start to change how your DNA expresses itself. It'll change how your cells behave because the voltage gradients in your body are different now. It'll change your brain rhythms. That's very clear evidence for that exists in the fact that if you ground yourself at night, your dreams become more vivid and lucid because the unconscious brainwave signals that are weaker in strength they have a higher signal to noise ratio because the noise levels, the electromagnetic noise levels in your brain and body go down through earthing. So that's clear evidence for that. Your heart rhythms become more coherent and your heart rate variability improves, which is a marker of all-cause mortality. It's one of like the key markers of all-cause mortality, to sudden mortality if you have poor heart rate variability. So earthing and connecting and being mindful of your electromagnetic environment and your personal electromagnetic potentials can be one of the most powerful things you can do to improve your gut health, because it's not diet based. A lot of people, they're only looking at their diet. It's not supplement based. It's not steroid based. It is really attacking things from a fundamental angle. And that can be very, very powerful. Now, I also want to talk about what are some things you can do to improve your gut health. I have a little card here just to help my memory. And if you are having gut health problems, then some of the things that you can do to improve your gut health and begin this positive upward trajectory is to eliminate gluten and wheat from your diet. And the reason why is that gluten degrades mucosal linings and intestinal linings. And it's not just for people that are intolerant or people that have celiac. This is a universal effect of wheat proteins. It may be insignificant in some people, but if you have gut health problems, then that's not a game you want to play. It's a stupid game to play. So there's plenty of gluten-free alternatives. They're just as good and just as delicious. Get those instead. Rather, instead of eating these processed foods anyways, you should be eating more beans, more rice, more vegetables, things of this nature, potatoes, tubers, etc. And that's actually the second one. Reduce your sugar consumption, your processed food consumption, your oxidized oil consumption. The body doesn't like to build bodily tissues out of things that are inherently unstable to begin with. It's almost like a free radical in and of itself. If the cell membrane is oxidized and is unstable, it might, survive a while, but then eventually it'll be more susceptible to free radical attack than it would have been if you, let's say, had healthy fats coming into your body from avocado and olives and things, coconut, things of this nature, full fat dairy. One of the best ways you can improve your gut health is through fasting. And the reason why is because fasting is one of the master on-off switches. Your gut exists to take food and to take the compounds out of the food and assimilate them into your body and to extract those nutrients and to get energy from that. That keeps your metabolism going, that keeps the whole party, everyone happy. That's why we have a gastrointestinal system. It's for that reason. If you have GI problems and you're not anorexic, then what you can do is you can simply fast and just cut all food out of the equation and let your body repair itself. This triggers autophagy. This triggers a lot of apoptosis in the cells that are deficient in dying, and then frees up new resources to be recycled and then put those into new cells that are growing, into repair cells that are still good enough to be repaired and not just completely scuttled. So fasting and just abstaining from all food and all calories is one of the master ways of healing your gut, and you can see dramatic turnarounds in your gut health in just 24 hours if you do a 24-hour fast, or even more so with a 48-hour fast. I have an article on my website, Wild Free Organic, talking about how you can reset your digestive system and your gut health in 48 hours. You can click that link if you want to learn more, or you can read the Holistic Gut Health Guide, which has an entire chapter on fasting. But fasting is that master on-off switch. So most people look at diet and they're like, oh, diet's important. Diet is important. But even bigger than diet is actually removing the diet, completely, saying no to food and allowing your body to regenerate and heal at that level. Then you do have your diet. One thing that could help a lot is eating things that come from the earth, because they are earth themselves, right? So they contain also a lot of these natural antioxidants and electrolytes. Like potatoes are loaded with potassium and electrolytes. Really good for you. And they also contain a lot of fibers, which the microbiome loves fiber. These symbiotic microbes that work beneficially with your digestive system, with your gut-brain axis, with your brain, with your moods, emotions, behaviors, brain waves, heart, everything. They love fiber, and they break fiber down into different, they metabolize fiber into secondary metabolites like short-chain fatty acids and these neurotransmitters and others, antioxidant compounds that are good for your body. Whereas a pathogenic microbe will eat sugar and then produce a toxin to kill symbiotic microbes and to degrade your mucosal lining and to kill your epithelial cells and to damage tissues in the body. So you can see that a symbiotic microbe, which actually creates antimicrobials that select against pathogens, versus a pathogen which is trying to kill you, there's a big difference, and your diet influences that. So whole unprocessed foods, I've already touched on those. I won't go into that more. One way you can improve your microbiome is through two wonderful herbs that I love, dandelion and chamomile. These are so safe. You only have to worry about them if you have a specific allergy to them, which I've never heard of. But if you have a, hay fever allergy, then chamomile you may want to be careful with. But these are incredibly safe herbs for the majority of the population. They're very accessible herbs, and they have normalizing effects on bioelectric rhythms. They're blood purifiers. They contain lots of antioxidants. They're anti-inflammatory. They normalize digestive enzyme secretion and bile production and peristaltic rhythms and gut motility and the secretion of acid in the stomach. And then they interact with the microbiome. They have all these fibers and all these polyphenols that the symbiotic microbiome loves. So a really easy way to improve your gut health dramatically in just 48 hours is to practice a lot of earthing by changing your electromagnetic potentials, getting away from some of these artificial electromagnetic fields, to fast for 48 hours, and to completely remove all food from your digestive system. Let it have a break, reduce inflammation. Cellular turnover occurs 20% for the epithelial digestive linings per day. Big regenerative effect. And then also to drink chamomile and dandelion tea throughout that entire process. And if you were to give yourself 2 days and just actually honor your health and wellness in your body, and give yourself 2 days to really be mindful and just to relax, activate your parasympathetic nervous system, do some earthing outside, go outdoors, drink the dandelion chamomile tea. There's other tea that's nice too, like green tea is really good for your digestive system, for inflammation and autophagy, things of this nature. And then to just not eat anything at all, you'll see huge turnarounds in your gut health. Now, another thing that's also really useful is things like CBD, which is a cannabinoid. This is an anti-inflammatory cannabinoid. They sell CBD lotion. You can put that on your stomach. You can put that in areas that are acting up. Maybe you have more, maybe you're just getting a lot of bloating, for example. Well, you can rub that on into your abdomen, and that should help. Also, like blue chamomile essential oil, a little pricey, but the stuff is pure magic. Also really good for sleeping and for relaxing and activating parasympathetic nervous system and for potentiating dreams. There's some little side benefits there. And then also things like lavender essential oil, which is much cheaper and also very relaxing and calming. You can put that on various parts of your body. You can put that here, you can put that along your spine, or specifically for the gut, you can put that and rub that into your abdomen. Links to those in the video description. Now, I talked about electrolytes a little bit. If you want to be more mindful of your electrolyte intake, then make sure you purchase sea salt. And this is sea salt without any additives. No yellow prussiate of, this yellow prussiate whatever stuff. It's this anti-caking agent. It's gunk. Just get pure sea salt. Ideally, you get like Celtic sea salt. Has all the different ions that you could ever want because it came from the sea, which is awash in ions. And if you use sea salt instead of like normal table salt, which is NaCl, then you also are getting calcium, magnesium, and all these other goodies there too, manganese. So that's another thing. You can utilize things like apple cider vinegar. You can take a shot of apple cider vinegar. Epsom salt, you can do an Epsom salt soak in the bath. Magnesium is really critical for your muscles and muscular contractions and also your brain health. So Epsom salt is really good for that. And then there are exercises that you can do. I'll show some here, like stomach vacuums will help to, just through physical movement, will actually help to kind of break up and disperse inflammation, any that might exist. It helps to restore normal gut rhythms, peristaltic rhythms. It restores gut motility into these natural rhythms and cycles that it should be. So stomach vacuums are great. You can also do different twisting motions just to kind of break up some of that inflammation that may exist in your torso gut region, because that whole area can become a larger electromagnetic potential that's positively charged, that influences, like there can be a larger electromagnetic potential around the gut, abdomen, stomach, chest, torso area. And that's why grounding is so valuable, because you can quickly decharge that. I have a story for you, is that when I was getting off an airplane where you're disconnected from the earth, and I also, this lady, this flight attendant, gave me some like bad water or something. It was really weird. Either way, I got off the plane, I started having really bad stomach pain, like the worst stomach pain I've like ever had. And I knew I just needed to get outside, but it was so bad I had to like lay down at the baggage claim. But the moment one of these people was able to help me, and I got outside and I laid down, within 10 minutes, my stomach pain totally went away, because I had built up this large charge in my stomach. Even though I was fasting on this flight, there was just so much energy. I'm sensitive to this. It is built up, and then just by going outside and laying down outside the airport at JFK, the charge just left my body. I could literally feel it flowing out of my back, and I was fine 10 minutes later. But I was in excruciating pain at the baggage claim, and it was all linoleum, flooring, plastic, vinyl, all this stuff. I couldn't get that charge out of my body. So there's some real stuff here, folks. And until you experience it, it's kind of hard to believe, because again, these electromagnetic fields are kind of invisible. You don't see them. But once you start to think about them and visualize and conceptualize them and imagine them, then you can start to understand better how these things interact with you at a fundamental level, health and wellness, and for the topic of this video, your gut health. The last thing, that something a lot of people don't realize, is that you should stop mixing your animal proteins. For example, you get a burger and you put bacon and an egg on there. Well, now you have egg chicken protein, you have the pork protein, you have beef protein, and if you have a bun on there that's not gluten-free, you also have wheat protein. So now you have all these different proteins that are mixed, and that can be confusing to the immune system and can just overall put a lot of stress on the digestive system. So if you are going to eat animal protein, that's your own decision, but you shouldn't mix them. You should just, if you're going to have beef, don't have anything else. If you're going to have chicken, egg, whatever. You should do very little mixing of proteins. This also goes to dairy, and this goes to soy. Any of these proteins are allergenic, and that can cause these allergic reactions. Best not to mix them. It's best to silo them. So you have a day where you have mostly that protein. Then the next day you can have the next one. You kind of go through these cycles, protein cycles, and that overall will help to reduce inflammation in your gut and improve your gut. So I hope you found this video useful. If you really want to learn more, you have to buy the Holistic Gut Health Guide. That's really like the next step. But I wanted to create this intermediate resource for you that's free, so you can really start to learn this and then apply this yourself into your life, your lifestyle. I would say just be very mindful of your autonomic nervous system, and really I think a first step is balancing your parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system activity. Luckily, things like the dandelion and chamomile tea activate your parasympathetic nervous system, so that's one of the easiest ways you can get started with all this. It improves your brain, microbiome, gut, and also your autonomic nervous system, heart. I mean, it's really insane how powerful some of these herbs are, and they're just tolerated so well by so many people. Their safety profile is ridiculous. You can eat grams and grams and grams of this stuff if you want. and there's a bunch of resources in the video description, some of them which I didn't even talk about, but they are there, so please go check that out. And if you want to learn more about the connection between geophysics and these electromagnetic fields and human health and biophysics, then I suggest you watch this video here on the left. If you want to learn more about earthing, then you can watch my earthing video here on the right. Have a great day, and I'll see you all in the next video. Ciao.